There's something almost poetic about a figure who rises to fame for embodying carefree, lo-fi authenticity, only to see that very ethos wane as the spotlight grows brighter. Mac DeMarco, once the poster child for slacker rock, offbeat humor, and DIY charm, has become a figure of quiet controversy and fading relevance. How did the chill, gap-toothed artist we all fell in love with come to symbolize disillusionment for so many of his fans? Today, we're unpacking the tragic rise of Mac DeMarco. What's up, Insomniacs? Jake from Sleepless Records here. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the tragic rise of Mac DeMarco. Before we jump into the video, hit that subscribe button and join the Sleepless Society today. And now, without further ado, let's jump into the video. Mac DeMarco's story begins in Duncan, British Columbia, a small town on Vancouver Island. Born Verner Winfield McBriar Smith IV in 1990, Mac's early years were far from glamorous. Raised by his mother after his father left the family, Mac developed a quirky personality that set the tone for his future career. Music wasn't a prestigious family tradition. It was a coping mechanism, a hobby, and eventually, a passion. In 2008, Mac moved to Edmonton, Alberta, where his first band, Makeout Videotape, was born. The project was rough around the edges, with songs recorded on cheap equipment and sold on burned CDs at local shows. But even back then, you could see Mac's charisma shining through. His sound, a mix of jangly guitars, irreverent lyrics, and a hazy vintage vibe, stood out. The real turning point came in 2012, when Mac released his debut album Rock and Roll Nightclub under Captured Tracks. This project wasn't just lo-fi, it was a love letter to the offbeat. Mac sang in a crooning, almost parody-like voice, blending elements of soft rock and slacker culture with surreal humor. Critics took notice, and Rock and Roll Nightclub became the gateway to his breakout second album, 2. Released in October 2012, 2 catapulted Mac into the indie spotlight. Tracks like Ode to Viceroy and My Kind of Woman became indie anthems. Mac's slacker persona, unfiltered, approachable, and deeply ironic, was a breath of fresh air in a music scene often accused of taking itself too seriously. But the most defining aspect of Mac's rise wasn't his music alone. It was him. Fans adored his offbeat antics, from cigarette-fueled interviews to goofy stage performances where he'd do everything from playing nude to sticking drumsticks where the sun doesn't shine. For a generation grappling with millennial angst, Mac was the perfect antidote, a guy who seemed to have figured out how to not care. By 2014, Mac DeMarco was everywhere. His third album, Salad Days, solidified him as the king of slacker rock. The record was introspective, yet still quintessentially Mac, filled with jangly guitar riffs, dreamy synths, and lyrics about growing up without losing your edge. Songs like Chamber of Reflection became cult hits, especially among young listeners searching for identity and purpose. Mac's aesthetic also played a huge role in his success. From his signature gap-toothed grin to his thrift store dadcore fashion, Mac didn't just sell music, he sold a lifestyle. Fans mimicked his laid-back demeanor, adopting his love for secondhand clothes, cheap cigarettes, and goofy charm. But with fame came expectations. Indie audiences, notoriously skeptical of anything perceived as inauthentic, began to scrutinize Mac's slacker persona. While Mac never explicitly sought mainstream success, his growing fan base brought him closer to the cultural zeitgeist. The question became, could Mac stay authentic while the world demanded more from him? By the time Another One dropped in 2015, some cracks began to show. The album was more subdued, featuring tracks like The Way You'd Love Her and No Other Heart that lacked the rawness fans had loved in his earlier work. While it was well received critically, some fans began to wonder if Mac's ethos was starting to feel performative, a carefully curated image rather than a natural extension of who he was. Mac DeMarco's rise was not without its controversies. His sense of humor, once celebrated as quirky and irreverent, began to draw criticism for being juvenile or even disrespectful. Fans who once laughed at his antics started to question if Mac's slacker persona was veering into laziness. One of the biggest turning points came with his 2017 album, This Old Dog. The record was a departure from Mac's usual style, leaning into acoustic instrumentation and more melancholic themes. Critics praised its maturity, but for some fans the change felt like the beginning of the end. Mac's signature charm seemed dulled, replaced by a weariness that didn't sit well with listeners who'd come to him for escapism. Things came to a head in 2019 with the release of Here Comes the Cowboy. The album was criticized for its minimalism, with some tracks feeling underdeveloped or repetitive. Even the title sparked controversy. Fans accused Mac of ripping off Mitski's Be the Cowboy, which had been released just a year earlier. Mac dismissed the criticism, saying the title was a coincidence, but the damage was done. The controversy surrounding Here Comes the Cowboy marked a turning point in Mac's career. Fans who once celebrated his carefree ethos began to see it as complacency. Critics accused him of phoning it in, releasing work that felt less like a labor of love and more like a placeholder for an artist unsure of his next move. In recent years, Mac DeMarco has been notably absent from the spotlight. He still releases music and performs, but the buzz that once surrounded him has faded. While artists like Mitski, Phoebe Bridgers, and Steve Lacy have taken up the indie mantle, Mac's name rarely surfaces in conversations about modern indie icons. Part of this fade-out seems intentional. Mac has always rejected the trappings of fame, preferring to live quietly in Los Angeles with his longtime partner, Keira McNally. He's been open about his desire to focus on his personal life, saying he's content with where he is. But the question remains, did Mac DeMarco fade away, or did he fall out of favor? For some fans, Mac's retreat feels like a betrayal of the ethos he once represented. The slacker king who promised authenticity has become something of a ghost, his presence no longer as vibrant or engaging as it once was. Despite his controversies and fade-out, Mac DeMarco's impact on indie music can't be overstated. His DIY approach inspired countless bedroom musicians to pick up guitars, hit record on their laptops, and share their art with the world. Tracks like Chamber of Reflection and My Kind of Woman remain staples of indie playlists, their charm undiminished by time. Mac's rise and fall also serve as a cautionary tale about authenticity in the age of social media. He became famous for being himself, but as his platform grew, so did the pressure to maintain that image. For an artist like Mac, whose appeal lay in his lack of pretense, the demands of fame were inevitably at odds with his identity. At its core, the tragic rise of Mac DeMarco is about the cost of staying true to yourself in a world that constantly asks for more. Mac's career may have had its highs and lows, but his influence endures. Perhaps that's the most authentic legacy of all. Leaving when you're ready, even if the world isn't done with you yet. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives. Until next time, good night.